Thanks, Jen. Right now we don't have any questions from the audience, and I'm going to go ahead and ask if any of the other presenters or facilitators have any questions. You could go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. If you do, I'll just give you a second.
Hey Jen, this is Brad. What kind of tractor is that new one? Was it a Massey Ferguson?
It is. Yep, we switched from an Oliver, 60-year-old Oliver, over to a 2004 Massey Ferguson, which was a huge change for us.
Great. Did you find that locally, or where were you able to find that?
We did actually. We got it at Diesel Machine down in Lewiston, and it came off of the spiral grade on the Lewiston Hill. Are you a little jealous of my tractor?
Yeah, tractor envy. Yeah, no, that's great. That is a nice piece of equipment. I think that's really important to let folks know having the appropriate size equipment for your operation. What I didn't mention with the organic farm is we're scaling up to 30 acres, and we've had smaller tractors up till now, and we are looking for something more along those lines for our larger equipment. So that's great. Congratulations.
Thanks. So I can add one more comment about that. So our new tractor is a 90 horsepower tractor, which is about the lowest you can go to be able to still operate much of the equipment that I've mentioned for haying. It takes a certain amount of horsepower for those to be able to run like a baler or a swather, just because of the capacity of what it's trying to do. A lot of farm tractors that work really well, like a 35 or a 50 horsepower tractor, would not be appropriate for doing a larger scale farming. That would work well for a lot of the other things that I've talked about. Even seeding, you could use things like that, or just the feeding and picking up bales and that kind of thing.
Jen, this is Cinda. I had a question about your manure spreader. Now that looked like it was a little bit older. Is that something that you found around here, or where'd you get that?
We actually found that not too far from here, a couple hours away, and we were just happened to be driving through, and it was sitting out front of a place where a guy had a bunch of antiques for sale, and I think we paid $100 for that, and he thought we were going to use it for yard art, which is what he was selling it for. And yeah, and actually we haven't had to really do a lot to it. You can see that it's pretty worn out and beat up, but functionally it's all there. I mean, we have to replace links on the chains and things like that, but that's one of the nice things about manure spreaders, is that they pretty much are functioning the same way they did now as they did 100 years ago. There's not a lot of mechanical changes or anything with how those actually work. And so that one really was nice. Maybe I will make one more comment about balers too. One key difference with like small balers versus large balers is that the complexity of what it takes to bale up a small bale and the knotter, and what it does is when it's picking that hay up, it's compressing it. That's why you can take flakes off. When you open a bale of hay, you can take flakes off, is because that's each time that the baler is picking up a bit of hay, it compresses it and picks up more and compresses it into those bales and then ties it and knots it. Those knotters on those small balers are the bane of anybody doing hay in small bales. The large balers, on the other hand, are all they do is take a piece of string and wrap it around a bunch of times, and it overlaps. There's never a knot. There's nothing ever to tie. So it's very simple mechanically. And this is just one thing that, my husband has become very knowledgeable about, because I can tell you there's a lot of hours that he has spent underneath the small baler getting the knotter working properly, with zero hours invested for that same reason on the big baler. We had to do a few minor things when we purchased our big baler to get it functioning properly, but you never have to think, oh, is it going to work when I want it to work? You go out and the big baler just does what you want it to do. The small baler has a little bit of an attitude, and you have to have somebody that knows how to manage it properly to get it to do what you want to do. You have to sweet talk it a little bit to get those bales right. And it's not just our baler. This is fairly consistent with other people too.
Jen, this is Colette. Can you talk a little bit about where you would advise people to look for used equipment?
Well, it's kind of like when you're looking for a piece of property, you're looking everywhere. I guess the most modern places and the places that we've looked, once you get into the habit of thinking that you are needing something, like I'll just give the example of the manure spreader. When we knew that we needed a manure spreader and wanted to buy one, we looked at all the obvious places, like Craigslist, Money Saver, all the places where anyone advertises things around here, local equipment dealers. Here locally in our area, and I know not everybody that's listening is from Moscow or this regional Palouse area, but Diesel Machine, which I mentioned where we purchased our tractor from, is a local dealer, and we've found we've had fairly good luck with finding used equipment through them. A lot of people that are selling equipment, are busy actually farming, and so most people do use a local equipment dealer to sell equipment, and the nice thing about that is that it's going through their mechanics shop before it gets put back out on the lot, and is getting major things and kinks worked out before it's getting resold. And we found that that's a reasonable way to find equipment. But then the manure spreader is a good example. We were just driving on a personal trip one day through Dayton, Washington, and that's where we ran across that manure spreader, and we go and talk to the guy. Same thing with other pieces of equipment. That's how we bought a head gate for our cows. We're always looking. You kind of have to keep in your mind, and then you also have to be flexible and know that you don't just go by the first thing you see. You need to look at enough of it to know that what's going to be right and what's going to suit your needs, and be willing to walk away from something if it's not quite the right thing, or come back to it if it turns out being the right thing.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciated your presentation, and we're going to move on to our next speaker, Melissa Lyons.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Melissa. Good to see you again. Thanks, Jen. That was really a great presentation. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody did. We had a few requests to talk about hay production, and so that's why I'm grateful we were able to get Jen to speak tonight. But what that means is I'm not going to be able to talk about the facilities portion of livestock. I'm going to totally focus on equipment, but that's okay, because I've talked about in a couple of the previous webinars, the one about evaluating enterprises, and then more so in livestock production, that animals really do not need very fancy housing. They don't need a barn. All they need is some kind of protection from wind and rain. That's the key. If you are breeding whatever species you're raising, and you want to have them birthing early spring, late winter, you probably want to have a barn just for protection. But if you're breeding on a little more natural schedule, certainly if you're going to be pasture raising your animals, you'll probably calve or lamb or kid in May out on pasture. It works wonderful, as long as they have some shelter for the horrific weather. Okay, next slide, please. There, of course, is, okay, next slide after that. That's my intro. I am going to make one exception to what I just said, and that is hay storage. As I said in the livestock production week 6, feed is probably going to be your single largest expense in caring for your animals. And it's critical to keep it dry. You've spent a lot of money on that. And as I said earlier too, You don't want to risk your hay getting wet and moldy, because moldy hay can just cause your animals not to do as well, and it can kill them if it's bad enough. So here are 4 examples of hay storage, and certainly the one that's not shown, and certainly you're fine to do this too, is just cover it with a tarp. But I'm here to tell you, if you live in a climate that has rain or snow, it is no fun at all having a stack of small bales covered with a tarp. You go out in a howling windstorm, of course, howling blizzard, lift the tarp up to pull down some bales. The tarp has 2 feet of snow on it. It's so awkward. So I want to suggest one of your first goals should be get some kind of storage for your hay. Get it under cover. I wanted to point out something on 2 of these, the upper left picture and the bottom right picture. This is a really important piece of equipment on any farm, and that is pallets. See in both of those pictures, the hay is sitting on pallets. It's very possible your ground is, in late winter, early spring is going to get wet and soggy. And I've had it happen in a wet barn that the entire bottom row of hay was completely ruined. So much moisture came in, it just turned to wet, slimy, black mold that I couldn't feed. Now, it made nice mulch, but that was a huge waste. So pallets, you can get pallets for free. You know, whenever I'm in town with my truck, I have my eyes open. The building supply store will have a stack of them out there. I'll drive in, zip, zip, pick out the nice ones, throw them in the truck. I bet I have 50 pallets at my house. You'll find countless uses for them. One other item I wanted to point out is the lower left picture. This is not something that we think about often. See the roof line on that barn? If you live in snow country, when that snow falls off that roof, you're going to have easily a couple feet of hard-packed snow turned into ice. If that's the way you have to access your hay, it's just a pain. I'm hoping in this picture that that barn has a big door on the right end where the farmer can drive in and get their hay. So if you have the chance and you're going to design your own buildings, think about where the snow is going to fall, or even rain, if there's going to be a mud pit there draining off the roof. Okay, next slide, please. I wanted to give you lots of different examples of how you can feed hay, and there are as many examples of ways to do it as there are farmers. I wanted to show you store-bought methods, and I'm going to, all through this presentation, I'm going to show you home-built feeding equipment that people have designed themselves. But all of them have these 2 things in common. They keep the animals out of it and keep the feed in, and they minimize the amount of feed that comes out of the feeder and is on the ground and gets trampled. With the large animals, I highly recommend the metal feeders, like that horse feeder on the left, or the cattle around the red feeder. You can use things like cattle panels, but in time they're going to tear them apart. You can also certainly build heavy-duty ones with good lumber and good hardware. That second one from the left, the little goats eating, those look like Nigerian dwarf goats. That looks like it holds 1 or maybe 2 bales of hay. That's a really simple home-built feeder. My only recommendation is that on all 4 corners you maybe pound in some rebar to secure this thing, because all animals, even little ones like that, are surprisingly hard on equipment. Someday those folks are going to come out and it's going to be knocked over. Just kind of plan ahead. Those double tires make great feeders as well. Those are available from farm stores and tire supply places. Down at the bottom right, this is a home built with the use of some tubular gates. These look like maybe they're 16-foot gates. They, at one time in their lives, were red. This looks like a great effective system. As you can see at the end, there's a gate so that the farmer just needs to, when it's time to feed, run the animals out of the barn, of course, open the gate, go in, clean out whatever needs to be cleaned out, like the really, really coarse stems the goats didn't like, drag in the new hay, boom, he's good to go for quite a long period of time, depending on how many bales you want to put in there.